welcome Clint to both studios.
Thanks for having me.
Good
nice
to
to
see you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you.
I mean, the first thing that I'd like to speak to you about is, can you remember back in the early days, sort of 83, 84, 85, when we were kind of first getting the band together? Do you remember how difficult it was?
Well, yeah. I mean, well, certainly it wasn't anything like this. You know, a place where you could sort of convene and I suppose meet people who might be able to, I don't know, help you out or push you in the right direction. But also as well, you know, it's fantastic the way that obviously technology has advanced.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of getting into a recording studio when back then was just a pipe dream, really. You know, so it's very difficult to sort of hone your ideas, really. I mean, I remember, like, you know, obviously the biggest thing for us was getting a porter studio to sort of help get our ideas down, so you could actually hear what you were doing. Because, you know, when you're just rehearsing around, you know, as we were around Graham's mum's house, you know, and particularly when we couldn't really play that well, you know, so it's difficult to sort of work through your ideas, you know. But once we had that opportunity with the porter studio, you could start laying things on top of one another and seeing how it sort of worked. And you know, obviously with the advent of you know, computer recording these days, it seems to be more available, and it's fantastic that a place like this exists that you can have access to it. You know. So,
I mean, you know, think about digital technology. I mean, everybody's got access to computers, whether they've got their own computer or they've got them at school, or you know, if they come to a place like this, got, you know, reasonably cheap access. Do you think that has made more opportunities for people to succeed in it?
Well, I mean, the bottom line for me is, without that, I wouldn't be doing what I do. You know, I mean, there's no two ways about it. You know, because it goes right back to that porter studio thing of just being able to catalogue your ideas and, you know, keep them, have access to them and work on them, you know. And with things like GarageBand and Fruity Loops, all that sort of stuff, you know, it does give people an opportunity to get their ideas going. I know there's a school of thought where, or there used to be, maybe it's changed now, where, you know, you got to practice for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and become Jimmy Page before you can do something, which, you know, there's no real escape from hard work, but it doesn't necessarily have to be put into that area anymore. You know, you can, you know, make your own musical language to a certain degree, if you like, because at the end of the day, it's self-expression, and there's no real right or wrong choices if you've got the time to work at it and the access to the material to be able to follow what you're thinking, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant thing that, like I say, I wouldn't be able to do my job without it, you know.
I mean, one thing that constantly strikes me working with students, not just at Halzone College, but at projects we've done here as well, you know, with people who haven't got on well at school or have been excluded, etc., etc., and we give people the opportunity to pursue music as a viable career option. And you know, I'd never say to anyone, if you come and study music at college, you'll definitely get a job as a musician, but we can show people how to use recording equipment, how to use the music production software, give them an insight into things like royalties and copyright. I mean, do you remember ever having a conversation when you were sort of 15, 16 with careers advisors at school, or your parents even, who would have thought that would be a sensible thing?
Not at all. I mean, you know, in the studios where we work, you know, to record the film scores, there's always interns, and you know, some of the music editors I've worked with have far better sort of musical credentials than I do these days, you know, from projects and situations like this, or then going on to, you know, full-blown courses where you can do music production, and you know, and you learn all aspects of it from that side, you know. So when you get an opportunity, say it's either a recording studio or working with either a film company or a record company or something, you've got the sort of a head start on the skills that you could use, you know. But no, I mean, you know, when we were at school, we were probably just dreamers, really, looking out the window and thinking about stuff. There was never a real opportunity to do something like this as a going concern.
You know, I definitely remember an attitude from my parents as well as from my teachers that, you know, if you said that you wanted to be a musician when you go, it's like, don't be so bloody stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's all right for a while, but have something to fall back on, get a real job, you know.
So how do you think that sea change has come about, where it is now seen as a viable career option?
I don't really know, to be honest, but I mean, I would say that the the music industry, for one thing, has changed, I think, over the years. There was always an image, you know, of rock and roll as being out of it and all that sort of stuff, you know, and working when the muse strikes, if you like. But over the last 20 years, I mean, particularly say in the world of, say, hip-hop or something, these guys have become sort of international moguls, you know, heading up companies that don't just do music, they make clothes and vodka and God knows what else, you know. So I think the image of what a music maker has changed over the years, you know. And again, with the opportunities that places like this and other courses provide, I guess it's just come into a slightly more acceptable
career
vein,
path.
really, yeah.
The next question that I want to ask you is, excuse me while I clear my throat. When we were first starting out in a band and we got involved with major record labels, we were always kind of pushed into competing with the mainstream music industry, and it seems to me that in the current climate, it's much easier for people who are doing interesting music to exist outside of the mainstream.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of the access to means of production, distribution, and all that kind of thing. You know, when we were trying to sell music, you kind of had to go through a major record label if you wanted to sell your records in Germany or Australia or whatever. But with the advent of all the online stuff, and you know, people can do their own marketing and have their own campaigns. I mean, in some aspects, it's going to be a lot easier for young people nowadays to kind of get their ideas out there. But do you think that in some ways it makes it more difficult as well because everybody has got something out of there?
Well, I mean, you know, I guess the marketplace is always going to be chock-a-block, and to some degree, success at it will be down to the consumer, if you like, of buying the things they like. But obviously, you've still got to get it to them. I mean, it's difficult to. I mean, it depends. You know, you go back to what the question of success is. You know, the first element of success, I think, is really doing something that you really like, you're really happy with, and what you believe in. And undoubtedly, I think there's more chance of somebody being able to do that now once they sort of have access to this sort of equipment and this sort of space to do that. And I think if I mean, we sort of grew up in the time of thinking that getting a major deal was the pinnacle of success, and that was what it was all about, which, you know, as we now know, that's not the truth at all, you know. I mean, it's just really a bit of, you know, a bit of an ego boost, really. Whereas now, you know, you see a lot of records by people that, you know, like somebody like Bon Iver or something that's taken his laptop off into the wilds of Canada and made a record on his own, and suddenly it's become a huge sensation because people have really connected with what it actually is.
But there's a certain honesty to his music because he's doing what he wants to do rather than trying to fit.
And I think that's probably the biggest principal benefit of it all, really, that it allows somebody to do their own thing without that sort of pressure of, oh, well, you know, if you hit the chorus after 30 seconds, you know, and all that sort of stuff takes away the self-expression, which really is one of the core factors of doing it like this, you know.
So, without being too corny, let's pretend that you're not sitting here with me, but you're sitting here with some 15-year-old kid who's passionate about music and is really interested in figuring out a way that he can make a living, pay his rent, whatever, from doing music. What advice would you be able to give him?
Well, I mean, to some degree, it depends on what sort of genre he or she might be interested in. You know, if it's a more esoteric area to some degree, you know, you've constantly probably got to be careful of the amount of money you spend and stuff like that, because, you know, we've all got to live and that type of thing. But the more you can keep it under your control, the more control you can have over your end product, if you like. However, if you do have something that's going for a more commercial sheen, you know, it would be perhaps about, you know, you'd probably have to really know your market for something like that, you know. And with any of these things, with having access to all the equipment to be able to do what you want, there is no real getting away from hard work and devoting yourself to what you're doing, because yeah, to some degree you have got to be. It's not necessarily about being better than the other guy or girl, but it's about maximising what you've got, you know, and you can't really do that sort of half-arsed, really. But for me, it's just always really about being yourself and trying to find what's true to you, because, you know, I mean, I remember sort of, you know, like after we had left the band, you know, and sort of trying to sort of do things that were probably contemporary at the time, like, you know, and wondering, why don't my songs sound as good as the Chemical Brothers, you know? And go, well, you know, the Chemical Brothers do their thing, you know.
And you've got to find your
thing. You've got to find your thing, you know, and that might end up sounding nothing like the Chemical Brothers or Led Zeppelin or whatever, but it becomes, you know, an entity of its own. And I think the pursuit of that is, whatever genre you go for, I think it will probably stand you in the best stead.
Okay, so are we good, Warren? Well, thanks for coming and talking to us.
My pleasure.
It's great to catch up with you. Good luck with all your projects that you've got coming up.
And to you all here, it's great.
I'll see you next time you're over.
You bet.
Visited. Thanks a lot, Clint.
Cheers, Rich.
Great, thanks very much.
No problem.
Okay.
Painless.
Yeah.
I think we deserve a beer after that.
Well, I wouldn't say no to that.